The morning sun slipped through the cracks of the old wooden blinds, painting soft golden lines across the small room. Inside, a young girl named Emily Grace sat cross-legged on her thin mattress, staring at a torn magazine page pinned to the wall. It showed a woman in a bright red dress, stepping out of a shining car, smiling like the world belonged to her. Emily stared at that picture every morning. It wasn't just a photo to her, it was a promise. Her mother, Martha, worked double shifts at a diner downtown, barely making enough to cover rent and food. Their home was small, the paint peeling from the walls, and the heater worked only when it wanted to. But Emily's dreams were too big for that tiny apartment. She didn't just want to survive, she wanted to live. "Emily!" Her mother called from the kitchen. "You'll be late for school again." Emily rushed to the mirror, tying her brown hair into a loose ponytail. Her clothes were old, faded, and 2 sizes smaller, but she smiled anyway. "One day," she whispered to her reflection, "I'll have everything I dream of. Nice clothes, good food, a house with big windows, and a life worth remembering." On her way to school, she passed by the main street of the town, rows of glass buildings, fancy stores, and people dressed in suits and designer dresses. She would slow down near the boutique windows, staring at the mannequins and thinking, what does it feel like to live like that? At school, things weren't much different. The other girls talked about vacations, phones, and shopping, while Emily kept her head down, quietly finishing her homework. She wasn't invisible, just different. During lunch, a girl named Sophie Lane, one of the popular ones, leaned toward her and said mockingly, "Still dreaming about being rich, Emily? Maybe you'll marry a millionaire." Emily didn't reply. She just smiled faintly. No, she thought, I'll be one myself. That night, when her mother came home tired and worn out, Emily served her the leftover soup and said softly, "Mom, do you ever think about living somewhere better?" Martha sighed. "Honey, some dreams are too big for people like us." Emily looked out the window where the city lights flickered like distant stars. "Then I'll just have to reach higher than the stars," she said quietly. And in that moment, in that dimly lit room with cracked walls and broken dreams, something inside her ignited. A spark, a decision, a beginning. The next morning, Emily woke up before the alarm even rang. The air was cold, her blanket thin, but her heart was on fire. She had decided today she would do something, no matter how small, that would bring her closer to the life she dreamed of. After school, instead of going straight home, she walked to Maple Street, the area filled with cafes, small shops, and fancy boutiques. The smell of roasted coffee beans and fresh pastries filled the air. Emily looked around nervously, clutching her worn-out school bag. She had never been there alone before. One of the shops caught her attention. Baker and Bloom, a cozy little cafe with golden lights and big glass windows. People inside laughed softly over coffee cups and laptops. Emily hesitated at the door, her heart pounding. She wanted to belong to that world, even if it was just as someone who cleaned the tables. She pushed the door open. "Excuse me," she said, her voice almost trembling. "Are you hiring?" The woman behind the counter, a middle-aged lady with kind eyes named Mrs. Sanders, looked up from the register. "Hiring? Not officially, but we always need an extra hand." During rush hours, she studied Emily's nervous face. "You've got experience?" Emily shook her head. "No, ma'am, but I can learn fast." Mrs. Sanders smiled faintly. "All right, come tomorrow at 4. Let's see what you can do." Emily's eyes lit up. It wasn't a glamorous job, but it was something. When she returned home, her mother looked at her suspiciously. "Where have you been so late, Emily?" "I got a job," she said excitedly. "At a cafe. I'll help after school." Her mother frowned. "You need to focus on your studies, not on work." Emily nodded quietly, but her eyes sparkled. This is just the beginning, she thought. The next day, she started her first shift. The cafe was crowded, and she worked hard, wiping tables, cleaning cups, carrying trays. Her shoes hurt, her hands ached, but she didn't complain once. She loved being there, surrounded by people who lived the life she wanted. When Mrs. Sanders saw her dedication, she smiled. "You remind me of myself when I was young," she said. "Keep that fire burning, kid. It'll take you far." That night, as Emily walked home under the city lights, her shoes were soaked from the rain, but her heart was full. She looked up at the skyscrapers glowing in the distance and whispered, "Someday I'll be up there too." And for the first time, she didn't just hope. She believed. The smell of coffee and cinnamon had started to feel like home. 2 weeks passed since Emily began working at Baker and Bloom, and every day she grew a little more confident. Mrs. Sanders often praised her hard work, and customers noticed her bright smile and kind manners. By the end of the month, Emily held her first paycheck in her hands. It wasn't much, just $2.40, guys, but to her it was a treasure. She stared at the check for a long time before whispering, This is the first step. That evening, she went into a small clothing store downtown. Her shoes were still muddy from work, and the store smelled of expensive perfume. The saleswoman gave her a quick glance, then looked away. Emily didn't mind. Her eyes were fixed on a simple blue dress hanging near the window. Not too fancy, but elegant. The price tag said $85, and she hesitated, then took a deep breath and bought it. It was her first real purchase, something that belonged entirely to her. When she reached home, her mother was sitting by the table, sorting through unpaid bills. "What's in the bag?" she asked tiredly. Emily smiled. "A dress for me. I used my paycheck." Her mother sighed deeply. "Emily, we could have used that money for groceries." Emily looked down, guilt washing over her. "I know, Mom, but I wanted to feel like I belonged somewhere better." Her mother didn't reply, just turned back to the bills, her silence heavier than words. That night, Emily sat by the window wearing the blue dress, her heart torn between pride and regret. Outside, the city lights shimmered, and she whispered, "I'll make it worth it, Mom, I promise." The next morning, she wore the dress to the cafe. Everyone noticed her. Even Mrs. Sanders smiled warmly. "Looking sharp today, Miss Grace," she said. Emily felt a new kind of confidence flow through her. She greeted customers with energy, carried trays gracefully. She looked like she belonged. But halfway through the day, disaster struck. As she carried a tray full of coffee cups toward a table, someone bumped into her. The cups crashed to the floor, hot coffee spilling everywhere and splashing all over her new blue dress. Everyone turned to look. The cafe went silent. Emily's face burned red with embarrassment. Mrs. Sanders hurried over. "Are you okay?" she asked. Emily nodded, fighting back tears. "I'm fine. It's just coffee." But inside, her heart shattered. Her first symbol of success was ruined in minutes. That night, she washed the dress again and again, but the brown stains never left. She stared at it under the dim light and whispered, "Maybe dreams come with a price." Still, even through her tears, she smiled faintly. "But I'm willing to pay it." The next few days at Baker & Bloom were tough. Every time Emily saw the faint brown stains on her blue dress, her heart ached. But she didn't stop working hard. Mrs. Sanders noticed. One evening, as the cafe was closing, she called Emily over. "You've got potential, Emily," she said while wiping the counter. "You're polite, you're hardworking, and you care. Not many people do these days." Emily smiled shyly. "Thank you, ma'am." Mrs. Sanders leaned closer. "A friend of mine runs a fashion event downtown next week, a charity gala. She's looking for young assistants to help with setup and coordination. It's not a big job, but it's a good chance to meet people. Important people." Emily's heart skipped a beat. "A fashion event?" she repeated, her eyes wide. "Yes," Mrs. Sanders nodded. "It might open a few doors for you, if you're brave enough to step through them." That night, Emily couldn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, imagining herself walking among elegant people, bright lights, and music. "Maybe this is it," she thought. "Maybe this is where my dream begins." When the day arrived, she wore her best clothes. Clean, neat, and pressed, though not new. She reached the grand hall early. It was enormous, with chandeliers glittering like stars and walls draped in white silk. People hurried around, setting up tables, lights, and decorations. Emily was assigned to help backstage, arranging dresses, keeping things in order, and running small errands. The designers and models moved about confidently, their voices echoing through the hall. Emily watched them with silent admiration. Around noon, a tall woman with sharp features and a sleek black outfit walked in. Victoria Hales, the events coordinator. Everyone seemed to move faster when she entered. She stopped when she noticed Emily neatly organizing a pile of dresses. "You," Victoria said, her tone direct. "Who are you with?" "Mrs. Sanders, ma'am. I'm helping today." Victoria raised an eyebrow. You're doing a better job than most of my team." Emily flushed. "Thank you, ma'am." Throughout the day, Emily worked tirelessly, fixing things quietly, solving problems others ignored. By the evening, the event looked perfect. Victoria approached her again, this time softer. "You've got an eye for detail, kid. Ever thought about working in fashion?" Emily froze, her heart racing. "Fashion? Me?" Victoria smirked. "Why not? Talent can come from anywhere." That night, when the event ended and the guests left, Emily stayed behind, sweeping confetti from the floor. Her feet hurt, her hands were sore, but her eyes were glowing. For the first time, she felt like she wasn't standing outside her dream anymore. She was slowly stepping into it. A few days after the event, Emily was back at Baker & Bloom, cleaning tables and serving coffee like always. But inside, she was still replaying Victoria Hales's words, "Ever thought about working in fashion?" Those words echoed in her head like music. Late that afternoon, the cafe phone rang. Mrs. Sanders picked it up, then called out, "Emily, it's for you." "For me?" Emily blinked in surprise. She had never received a call at work before. When she picked up the phone, a familiar, confident voice spoke on the other end. "Emily Grace?" "Yes, ma'am? This is Victoria Hales. I've been thinking about you. There's an internship opening at my firm, Hales Designs. It's unpaid for now, but it's a foot in the door. Are you interested?" Emily's heart almost stopped. "Yes, I mean, absolutely, ma'am. I'd be honored." "Good. Be at our office Monday at 8 a.m. sharp. Don't be late." And just like that, the call ended, leaving Emily breathless and trembling with joy. That night, she told her mother, "Mom, Victoria Hales offered me an internship at her company. It's a real fashion design firm." Her mother looked up from the stove, tired eyes softening slightly. "Unpaid?" she asked quietly. Emily nodded. "Yes, but it's a start. I'll still work evenings at the cafe." Her mother sighed. "Just don't forget, dreams don't pay bills." Emily smiled faintly. "Maybe not yet, Mom, but someday they will." Monday morning, she arrived early at Hales Designs. The office was like another world. High ceilings, shining floors, walls lined with sketches and fabrics. People hurried around, confident and stylish. Emily felt small in her plain outfit, but she held her head high. Victoria noticed her right away. "Punctual, good." She handed Emily a clipboard. "You'll assist in the design room. Take notes, arrange samples, do whatever they ask. And remember, attitude matters as much as skill." The first week was chaos. The designers spoke fast, the demands were endless, and mistakes weren't forgiven easily. Emily spilled fabric dye once and nearly cried, but she stayed quiet, cleaned it up, and kept going. By the end of the week, Victoria called her into the office. "You survived," she said, almost smiling. "That's more than I can say for most interns. Keep showing up with that determination, and you might just have a future here." When Emily stepped outside that evening, the city lights felt brighter than ever. The noise, the rush, it all felt alive. She looked up at the tall buildings and whispered, "I'm not dreaming anymore. I'm building it." But what Emily didn't know was that the path she had chosen would soon test her more than she could imagine, and force her to decide how much she was truly willing to sacrifice for her dream. Weeks passed at Hales Designs, and Emily's name started to be whispered in the hallways. Her work was neat, her ideas fresh, and her attitude unbreakable. Slowly, she became more than just an intern. She became noticed. One morning, Victoria Hales herself called her into the main studio. "Emily, I'm assigning you to assist on our upcoming show in Los Angeles," she said, flipping through sketches. "It's a big event. Important clients, cameras, investors. Don't mess it up." Emily's breath caught in her throat. "Yes, ma'am. I won't disappoint you." For the next 2 weeks, she worked harder than ever. Late nights, skipped meals, and little sleep. She ironed fabrics, pinned designs, checked details, and memorized schedules. Her passion burned like fire. But one night, as she was leaving the office, she overheard 2 senior designers whispering near the elevators. "Did you hear? Victoria's planning to drop one of the assistants. Too many mistakes last season." "Yeah, and that new girl, what's her name, Emily? She's getting too much attention." Emily froze. Her stomach twisted. Too much attention? She didn't mean to outshine anyone. She was just trying to survive. The next morning, she felt their stares. Cold, sharp, filled with quiet envy. One of the designers, Lena, deliberately handed her wrong fabric samples during a presentation. When Victoria noticed the mistake, she turned toward Emily with a stern face. "What is this?" "Wrong color, wrong texture." Emily's heart sank. "Ma'am, I was given the samples by—" But before she could finish, Victoria cut her off. "No excuses. Fix it now." Humiliated, Emily rushed out, tears stinging her eyes. She locked herself in the restroom, staring at her reflection. Her dream, the one she fought so hard for, suddenly felt like it was slipping away. She whispered, trembling, "Maybe Mom was right. Maybe dreams don't belong to people like us." But then, she remembered the night she sat by the window wearing her blue dress, the same night she promised herself never to give up. She wiped her tears, straightened her shoulders, and whispered, "No, I belong here, and I'll prove it." The next few days, she worked silently but fiercely. She redid every sample, checked every detail twice, and stayed long after everyone else had gone home. Even the janitor nodded at her once and said, "You got fire in you, girl." Finally, during the final rehearsal before the show, Victoria walked past her, stopped for a moment, and said quietly, "Good recovery. Emily, keep that focus." It wasn't much, but to Emily, it meant everything. As she left that night, the wind outside was cold, but the spark in her heart burned brighter than ever. She knew this was only the beginning, and storms only test those who are meant to rise. The Grand Hall in Los Angeles buzzed with energy. Models rehearsed on the runway, designers argued over final touches, and photographers adjusted their cameras. The upcoming Hales Designs Winter show was one of the biggest fashion events of the year, and Emily was in the middle of it all. She moved through the backstage chaos with confidence. "Careful with that fabric," she reminded one assistant, "and make sure the lights don't hit this gown directly. It'll dull the shimmer." Victoria, watching from a distance, raised an eyebrow. "She's learning," she muttered to herself. The night of the show arrived. The audience sparkled with celebrities, investors, and reporters. Music filled the air, lights dimmed, and the first model walked down the runway in a dazzling red dress, one that Emily had personally helped refine. When the applause began, Emily stood backstage, heart pounding. Every outfit she had worked on shone perfectly under the lights. She couldn't believe it. Her ideas, her touches, her vision were right there on stage for the world to see. Victoria approached her quietly. "Good work tonight," she said. "You've got instinct. I might have a real designer in the making." Emily's eyes widened. "Thank you, ma'am." Victoria gave a rare smile. "Don't thank me yet. The fashion world is beautiful, but it bites. Keep your head down and your work sharp." That night, the company's social media filled with photos and praises. Emily's name wasn't in the spotlight, but within the office. People began to notice her more, including those who didn't like it. Lena, the senior designer who had once sabotaged her, watched silently as Victoria praised Emily's designs in a meeting. Jealousy darkened her eyes. After everyone left, she whispered under her breath, "Let's see how long your luck lasts, little girl." Over the next week, strange things began happening. Sketches went missing. Fabric orders were switched. Once, Emily's laptop disappeared for an entire day, only to show up later with files deleted. Every time she tried to explain, people looked doubtful. Victoria began to grow distant again. "You need to be more careful, Emily. Mistakes aren't an option at this level." Emily stayed quiet, but inside she felt crushed. She worked day and night, trying to prove herself all over again. She started sleeping less, eating rarely, and even skipped her shifts at the cafe. One evening, as she stood alone on the balcony outside the office, the city lights stretched below her like a sea of stars. Her eyes were tired, her hands trembling, but her spirit refused to break. "I didn't come this far to stop now," she whispered. "If the world won't give me space, I'll carve my own." And at that moment, as the cold wind brushed her face, she decided that no amount of envy or betrayal could steal her dream. 2 days later, Emily arrived at work, humming softly to herself. She felt something new in her chest. Confidence. For once, she didn't feel like a shadow in that big building. She felt like she belonged. But when she reached her desk, her smile vanished. Her computer screen was black, her files gone. Every sketch, every draft, every document deleted. Panic clawed at her throat. She checked her backup drive, also empty. It felt like the floor had vanished beneath her feet. Before she could think, Victoria's assistant rushed toward her. "Emily, Ms. Graves wants to see you. Right now." Emily's stomach tightened. She walked into the office to find Victoria standing by her desk, a tablet in hand. On the screen were Emily's designs, posted online under Lena's name. "Do you care to explain this?" Victoria asked sharply. Emily froze. That's my work." "She stole it." "Those are my sketches." Victoria's face was unreadable. "Lena says otherwise, and she has timestamps to prove it." Emily's voice cracked. "She hacked me. Enough," Victoria cut in. "We don't accuse people without proof. I'm suspending you until further notice." The words hit like a punch. Emily couldn't breathe. The room blurred as she stumbled out, clutching her bag. Everyone in the office watched silently, some whispering, others pitying. Outside, rain began to fall. Emily sat on the curb, soaked, numb, and heartbroken. Everything she had built, gone. Her phone buzzed. A message from Lena. "Told you to stay in your place." Tears mixed with rain as she typed back. "You can steal my work, but not my talent." She put her phone away and stood up slowly. Her reflection shimmered in a puddle, tired, wet, defeated, but not broken. That night, she sat by her small window, sketchbook open, candlelight flickering across the pages. Her hands trembled, but she began to draw again. Not for Victoria, not for anyone, for herself. Hours passed, and something beautiful emerged, a new collection. born not from ambition, but from pain. She titled it The Broken Bloom. The next morning, a notification popped on her phone. An art blogger had shared her older design, drafts that Emily had once uploaded to her personal page months ago. Emerging talent redefines resilience, the post read. The blog went viral overnight. People began asking, who is Emily Rose? By afternoon, fashion scouts and independent designers were reaching out. And by evening, Victoria called. Her tone was different, humbled. Emily, we saw the post. I made a mistake. I know those designs are yours. Emily didn't answer immediately. She looked out the window. Rain had stopped and sunlight poured in. Thank you, she finally said softly. But I think it's time I start my own path. For the first time, her voice didn't shake. This wasn't just a comeback. It was a rebirth. 2 days later, Emily arrived at work, humming softly to herself. She felt something new in her chest, confidence. For once, she didn't feel like a shadow in that big building. She felt like she belonged. But when she reached her desk, her smile vanished. Her computer screen was black, her files gone. Every sketch, every draft, every document, deleted. Panic clawed at her throat. She checked her backup drive, also empty. It felt like the floor had vanished beneath her feet. Before she could think, Victoria's assistant rushed toward her. Emily, Ms. Graves wants to see you. Right now. Emily's stomach tightened. She walked into the office to find Victoria standing by her desk, a tablet in hand. On the screen were Emily's designs, posted online under Lena's name. Do you care to explain this? Victoria asked sharply. Emily froze. That's my work. She stole it. Those are my sketches. Victoria's face was unreadable. Lena says otherwise, and she has timestamps to prove it. Emily's voice cracked. She hacked me. Enough, Victoria cut in. We don't accuse people without proof. I'm suspending you until further notice. The words hit like a punch. Emily couldn't breathe. The room blurred as she stumbled out, clutching her bag. Everyone in the office watched silently, some whispering, others pitying. Outside, rain began to fall. Emily sat on the curb, soaked, numb, and heartbroken. Everything she had built, gone. Her phone buzzed. A message from Lena. Told you to stay in your place. Tears mixed with rain as she typed back, You can steal my work, but not my talent. She put her phone away and stood up slowly. Her reflection shimmered in a puddle, tired, wet, defeated, but not broken. That night, she sat by her small window, sketchbook open, candlelight flickering across the pages. Her hands trembled, but she began to draw again. Not for Victoria. Not for anyone. For herself. Hours passed, and something beautiful emerged, a new collection. Born not from ambition, but from pain. She titled it The Broken Bloom. The next morning, a notification popped on her phone. An art blogger had shared her older design, drafts that Emily had once uploaded to her personal page months ago. Emerging talent redefines resilience, the post read. The blog went viral overnight. People began asking, who is Emily Rose? By afternoon, fashion scouts and independent designers were reaching out. And by evening, Victoria called. Her tone was different, humbled. Emily, we saw the post. I made a mistake. I know those designs are yours. Emily didn't answer immediately. She looked out the window. Rain had stopped and sunlight poured in. Thank you, she finally said softly. But I think it's time I start my own path. For the first time, her voice didn't shake. This wasn't just a comeback. It was a rebirth. Weeks turned into months, and Emily worked harder than ever. She spent long nights at her tiny apartment, turning her pain into art. Every stitch, every cut, every fold in her designs carried a piece of her journey, her struggles, her tears, her hope. She didn't have a team or fancy machines. Just her old sewing kit, a borrowed mannequin, and a dream that refused to die. Then one day, opportunity knocked. A local fashion gallery, Rising Threads, was hosting an event for independent designers. They wanted fresh voices, real stories. Emily hesitated for a moment, then sent in her portfolio. A week later, an email arrived. Congratulations, Emily Rose. You've been selected to showcase your collection at Rising Threads, New York. She froze, rereading the message again and again. Tears filled her eyes. After everything, the loss, the betrayal, the humiliation, she was finally getting her chance. The next few weeks were a blur of preparation. She barely slept, surviving on coffee and determination. Her friends from the cafe helped her model her dresses, while her neighbors donated fabric scraps. When the night of the show arrived, Emily stood backstage, trembling. The lights, the cameras, the whispering audience, it all felt surreal. Then the host's voice echoed, Next up, a story of resilience and beauty, The Broken Bloom by Emily Rose. The runway lights dimmed, and her first model stepped out wearing a dress made of layered silks, torn yet beautiful, symbolizing strength after destruction. The audience gasped. Each piece told a silent story of heartbreak, hope, and rebirth. And when the final model appeared, wearing a gown embroidered with the words, "Still I rise," the crowd stood and applauded. Emily stood there, tears streaming down her face, as the sound of clapping filled the hall. It wasn't just applause, it was validation, forgiveness, and victory all at once. Later that night, as she walked outside into the cool air, her phone buzzed. A message popped up from Victoria. "Proud of you, Emily. You've become everything I hoped you would." Another message followed from Lena. "I'm sorry." Emily stared at the screen for a long moment before replying simply, "I forgive you." She looked up at the night sky, stars shining above the tall buildings, and whispered to herself, "I did it, Mom. I finally did it." Her heart felt light, her dreams no longer distant. She wasn't just the poor girl who wanted to be rich. She was a woman who had built herself from the dust. And as she walked down the quiet street of New York, her reflection glowed faintly in every store window. Not of a dreamer anymore, but of a doer. Months passed, and the name Emily Rose began to echo through the fashion world. Magazines wrote about her. Bloggers called her the girl who stitched her pain into beauty. But to Emily, it still didn't feel real. She still took the subway. She still brewed her own coffee in the morning. Only now, she did it with peace in her heart. Her collection, The Broken Bloom, was picked up by a major fashion house. Invitations poured in from New York, Paris, and Milan. For the first time in her life, she stood on a stage not as an intern, not as a dreamer, but as a designer the world admired. During a live interview, a reporter asked her, "Emily, your journey is inspiring. What kept you going when everything fell apart?" Emily smiled softly and replied, "Because I remembered who I was doing it for. For that little girl who believed her dreams mattered, even when the world said they didn't." Her answer went viral overnight. Young girls from small towns started writing to her, telling her how her story gave them courage to try. One message read, "I used to think girls like me couldn't dream, but after seeing you, I believe I can." Those words meant more to Emily than any award. She decided to open her own foundation, the Bloom Project, to help underprivileged girls learn design and art. Her old apartment became her first workshop. The same window where she once cried under candlelight now opened to laughter, colors, and creativity. Every morning, she'd greet the girls who came to learn, guiding them patiently, reminding them of one thing: your worth isn't measured by where you start, but by how you rise. One day, as she walked through her workshop, she noticed a young girl sitting in a corner, drawing shyly. Her clothes were old, her eyes full of fear, just like Emily's once were. Emily knelt beside her and asked softly, "What's your dream?" The girl hesitated, then whispered, "To be like you." Emily smiled gently. "Then promise me one thing, never stop believing you can." The girl nodded, and Emily felt a warmth spread in her chest. That moment, she realized, her success wasn't in fame or fortune. It was in passing the flame forward. As the sun set outside, its golden light filled the small room. Emily looked around at the sewing machines, the sketches, the laughter, and thought to herself, this is what I was meant to do. It was a quiet Sunday morning in New York. The streets were calm, sunlight slipping through the glass towers, painting gold across Emily's studio floor. She stood by the window, holding a cup of coffee, watching the city wake up. The same city that had once broken her now stood witness to her victory. Behind her, the walls of her studio were lined with her creations, dresses, sketches, photographs of smiling faces from her foundation. Each frame told a chapter of her life. Her assistant, Maya, walked in with a bright smile. "Emily, they've confirmed the Paris Fashion Week slot. You'll be closing the show." Emily turned, surprised and overwhelmed. "Paris will closing the show?" Maya nodded excitedly. "You're the highlight this year." Emily smiled, not with pride, but with quiet gratitude. That evening, she sat at her desk, opened her old sketchbook, the same one she'd used back in that tiny apartment, pages worn, corners torn, smudges of tears still visible. Between the pages, she found a note she'd once written to herself. "One day, you'll wear your pain like a crown." Her eyes softened. She whispered to the old pages, "You were right." A few weeks later, Paris glittered under the lights of the grand runway. Emily stood backstage, dressed simply in white, watching her models walk in her designs, her story, across the world's biggest stage. As the show ended, the audience rose to their feet, clapping endlessly. Flashlights flickered, cameras turned, reporters shouted her name, but all Emily saw in that moment was her younger self, that poor girl sitting on a rooftop, dreaming of good food, good clothes, and a better life. Tears welled up as she whispered to that memory, "We made it." After the show, she stepped outside, away from the noise and lights, and looked up at the Paris night sky. The stars shimmered like diamonds scattered in velvet. A soft breeze brushed against her face, and she felt something deep, peace. Her journey wasn't about becoming rich. It was about becoming whole. Her phone buzzed with hundreds of messages, but one caught her eye. It was from her father, who hadn't spoken much during her struggling years. "Proud of you, my little dreamer." Your mother would have smiled today. Emily closed her eyes. A tear slipped down her cheek, not of sadness, but fulfillment. She looked toward the sky one last time and whispered, "Thank you for giving me the courage to dream." And as she walked away under the Paris lights, her reflection glowed in every shop window, not the reflection of a poor girl anymore, but of a woman who had turned her dreams into destiny.